In this video, we're going to be going over the process for setting up the buyer documents in Brokermint. We're going to go over the buyer documents themselves more in detail in a separate video, but the documents that we'll be taking a brief look at to show you how to set up a transaction are going to be your basic buyer documents, a buyer broker agency agreement, the affiliated business disclosure, buyer due diligence checklist, wire fraud disclosure. Now, if you're doing an offer, we're also going to take a look at offer documents and setting up an offer, but that's going to be in a separate video. So let's just start with your basic buyer documents. Your basic buyer documents, there are two ways to do this. If you're going to be working with your transaction coordinator and have the transaction coordinator actually fill out the documents and send them to your buyers for signature, then you're going to use your TC EBBA, Exclusive Buyer Broker Agency Agreement, or ERS only brain dump. Now, we are going to look at the exclusive right to sell paperwork. That's the listing paperwork, but that will be in a separate video. Occasionally, you may find yourself in a situation where you're trying to do both at the same time. This used to be more of a standard practice. However, we now have to have an exclusive buyer broker agency agreement signed before we show any properties to a client. So we really shouldn't be trying to do both an offer and the paperwork to show them homes at the same time. There is also another way to go about this, and this is in the event this TC buyer under contract brain dump is typically in a situation where you've already done all the buyer broker documents, you've been showing them homes, and either it was a crazy weekend and you had to write the documents by hand, which happens still, or most frequently you've gone to see a builder, you're working with the builder, and now you're using the builder's documents that the builder provides to you and the buyer. We don't have the builder's contracts. We can't fill out their contracts. We don't know how, plus we don't have access, and we don't know their terms. So the builder's rep would provide those forms. And then since they've already now are under contract, you'd be responsible for sending those documents over. But again, that's a third of the contract. The idea behind the brain dumps are all the same. You simply fill out the Google form line by line with the information it requests for names, contact information, terms of the documents line by line. By the time you've answered all of the individual lines, then your transaction coordinator will have the information necessary to complete the buyer documents. Reality is you could be working weekends, after hours, when the transaction coordinators aren't available. So you do need to know how to go about setting up a transaction on your own. So as you enter into Brokermint, we are going to go to get to your buyer, the brain dumps, you go on the dashboard, which is where you should start. We're going to open transactions. Now keep in mind that my video is going to be showing you a lot more than what you would see. The only transactions you would see at this time would be your active transactions. So your list would probably be much, much, much shorter than mine. To start a transaction, we start with the Create Transaction button here. Drop it down and you'll notice Create New. Now, new transaction. Anything you see in red, or in a moment you'll see some highlighted in pink, must be filled out in order to establish and start the transaction. Type. This is simply asking what kind of transaction are we attempting to create. Traditional sale is exactly what it sounds like. Most of what you're going to be looking at is traditional sale. We are starting to see short sales come on the market. Occasionally, we'll have commercial. Sometimes we have paperwork that has to be filled out, but that's not there. But I'm going to put traditional sale. Status. When you start with a client or connection, and they do not have a signed form yet, and they do not have an active accepted offer, they're listed as an opportunity. As they work through the process, then it'll be moved to active or pending. So we're going to mark them as an opportunity, and we represent, in this case, buyer. You'll notice that it gives you the three, buyer, seller, and if you're representing both. Now, address. Obviously, you could put their current address in there. If not, anything that's pink has to be highlighted. So we're going to call this training make train face for an A. You'll notice down here additional fields. Expand to enter mandatory information. Click on that. Again, anything in pink must be filled out. Others could be filled out as you go along if you know them. For example, if you know that they're going to, what type of financing they're going to be using. This becomes important, particularly if they're using FHA or VA, because those become a flag to your transaction coordinator as you go through the process that there are going to be unique aspects because it's FHA or VA. Same with seller financing. Seller financing requires some very specific documentation, so this would be a good kind of update to them. I'm just going to put that this is conventional. Lead source. This is so to help you track where your most successful lead sources are. Please note, realtor, or excuse me, referral. We need to know what type of referral it was. Was this if another agent, either in our brokerage or another brokerage, who referred this particular client to you, we need to know that because we need to make sure we have the paperwork if there's going to be any kind of referral payment. If it's a referral from a past client, it's a good way to know that you've got your past clients referring them, but obviously there's not going to be any kind of payment required. RMHF, most of you are never going to deal with that. Some of you are signed, like myself, are signed up to do Veterans United. That's a reminder that we're going to have a referral fee that has to be paid. I'm going to click that this was an SOI. Property type. They're looking single family. Okay. That's pretty much all we're going to need at this time. So we're going to go to the next screen. Agent commission amount. We're on the buying side here on this one. Whatever amount you've negotiated with your buyer goes in there. Now remember, you can only be paid that amount. If you put 2% and seller offers 3%, you can only get 2%. That'll be covered more in depth in the compensation video, but keep in mind, you can only be paid up to and including the percentage you put there. All right, we got to put our contacts in here. If they're not already in there, it's going to ask you to create one. Now, the purpose for having an email is so that they can sign this digitally. Each of the individuals on this document have to have their own email. So if Training McTrainface and their sidekick Caboose are signing separately, they each have to have separate email addresses. Now, if it's more than one contact that's going to be in here, we can add another buyer. And as soon as I put in here, the next buyer, they're going to ask me to create it. And again, put in a separate email. Once you've gotten the names of all the buyers, I've had 3 buyers before because of family situations. It may be that you have more than 2. It's up to the situation. Now, we're going to create, from here, we can select a checklist that's going to bring in all of the documents you need so you don't have to go track them all down one at a time and find them. So in this case, I'm going to be using the PREX buying checklist. Now, you'll notice that's now already got a name. We have to put a transaction coordinator in there. As you start typing the name Mark Beckstrand, Mark is our lead transaction coordinator. His name will automatically populate right there. By adding that, it will automatically fill in Mark's contact information. It also makes it possible for him. You want to make sure it shows his user, but you'll notice there's his email address, there's the phone number, but leave it as a user so that Mark can follow up and still have access to the file later. Now we're going to create. Now over here in Documents, you'll see all the documents loaded. This is if it's, oh, I added the documents for if we're doing an offer. So we're going to go back. And if you make a mistake like that and you need to eliminate training McTrain face, then I can go edit, delete, and you go, whoops, I put the wrong documents in there. I can go right back over and go through the same process again. Select type, traditional sale, opportunity, representing the buyer, training, McTrain face, lead source. I'm going to mark him as, what do you go with? SOI. Same thing. 3%. Buyer. Oops. Oh, look. Training McTrain face is now in there. I should be able to add now Stoppy Caboose. Oops. Make sure you click your name in there. Anybody that you have worked with before is now going to be in the system. That comes in handy when you're creating offers because once you put your clients in there, they're going to be in there. Checklist. PREX pre-buying. And again, I'm going to put Mark in here as my, and it's M-A-R-C as you start to spell his name. Mark Beckstrand. Now, as I open up my documents, you notice I have all of the forms that we need. Now, brain dump right there. Don't worry about filling that one out if you're doing this on your own. If you completed a brain dump and Mark is creating this as the TC, or we have a couple of backup TCs, they actually load a copy of the brain dump in here so they've got a permanent copy. So if there's any question about what they put on the forms, they can go back and say, but this is what you told me on the brain dump. You'll notice affiliated business. So go to required buyer documents right here, use forms. You need to always have the affiliated business arrangement disclosure. That one is required because of our arrangement with partial ownership arrangement with veterans, excuse me, with UHL and Real Advantage Title. We can't get around those. Those are requirements. Exclusive buyer agency agreement, we gotta have that one. Easy exit agreement. Some of our agents choose to have an easy exit agreement addendum to the EBBA that says, if at some point you decide you want out of this agreement, you pay this amount of money to me for the time I've spent working with you, I cancel it, and we both walk away from this arrangement. It's up to you whether or not you choose to use that. In this case, I'm just going to go with the basics. This is a blank addendum to the EBBA. If you have a client who went and saw a home with another agent and they're no longer working with that agent, even if that agency agreement has been canceled or expired, you may want to put on there, this is a place to put, they have seen these homes with another agent and are excluded from this. That's to help protect you in case that other agent later on would say, hey, I helped this buyer see that property. Now you helped them buy it. I'm now going to sue you and your brokerage under the protection period that I put on there for that property. It's a rare occurrence, so for now, I'm just going to go with the basics. Buyer due diligence disclosure is required. Wire fraud alert disclosure is required. We recommend you use the home inspection disclosure. This is a HUD form that was created many years ago that simply instructs buyers they have the right to have the home inspected, and they're going to mark yes or no if they're going to do it. If they choose not to have a home inspection and mark, no, I don't want a home, I'm not going to do a home inspection, and sign it, this helps protect you in the future that if they come back afterward and say, but the home fell apart and we didn't know, you can say, but you signed in a document that said you weren't going to do it, and I recommended you did. Honestly, 99 out of 100 times they're going to have the home inspection that's in their best interest. Lender authorization, this is a form that we have created that allows us as a brokerage to contact the lender and receive a copy of any lender documents, as particularly the appraisal, because the appraisal report belongs to the lender and the buyer because that's who it was authorized to. And we like to keep a copy of the appraisal in the file, particularly if there is anything that comes up during the course of the transaction that we want to be able to document. This is why the decisions were made based upon an appraisal, particularly if we have to cancel because of appraisal-related issues or renegotiate price because of appraisal-related issues. But we have to get permission to get that. As soon as I click next, it's going to take me through the steps of, it's already set up the two. You notice it's telling me that it's missing an email. You can add additional buyers. Now, I'm going to remove the ones I don't need because they're just going to get in the way. Buyer agent. As soon as you start typing your name in there, you'll notice you should show up as a user. This allows you now to, as soon as this is completed, it will allow you to sign the documents you have to sign prior to it going out. Now you can notice that down here on the bottom it says buyer's agent. You can put this back in here. You can also choose to assign what order it goes out in the messages to who signs it when. Some agents choose to have one, two, 1, 2, 3. Generally, I leave it blank because that way it goes to both signers at the same time and they don't have to wait for each other. Now it's going to bring up the required documents and it's going to have them partially completed. You don't have to worry about putting names and initials in because it's automatically put those there. Anywhere they have to sign, you can choose to add date if you want to by adding a date and time here. And have it fill in as soon as that individual buyer signs it. It's your choice if you choose to do that. Um, you can also have it show date and time. Some agents choose just to go with the signature because the signature in this is automatically time stamped. In other words, as soon as the buyers sign that, in the box around their digital signature will be the date and time stamp. So if you want to go that route, you just don't even bother to add that. Now, this is where you have to make sure you do get things filled in. So Prime Real Estate Experts LLC, the company, and then you need to make sure you put your name in here as the agent. And anything that is in blue, light blue, as soon as you click in it, you'll notice it shows fill now. Anything else, buyer one, buyer two, buyer agent, if you click on that, it's going to put them in that in there. The difficulty with trying to click buyer one and buyer two is sometimes you run out of space. So this was training. And the boost. You notice if the names are too long, it's going to automatically start filling it in. Okay. Effective date, we know, is the date this takes effect. Always, 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 always remember this date is your date when this will expire. So let's go January. If I go 6 months, that'll be October. Oh, now This section right here, located only within or only at. Only within is where if they're looking at specific counties. Here's the caveat to this. If you put only in Salt Lake County and they decide they really like a house they want to see and it happens to be in Utah County, you get to do this again for one for Utah County. So if you don't want to have to keep filling these out for everyone located within any county. Okay, now you've got the whole state covered. Or if they only want this for a specific property, you're having an open house and somebody's coming in and they're unrepresented, and they want you to write an offer, you go through on just this house because they still want to be then you can put, or they only want you to represent them on this house, then you can do it for a specific property. Now, the buyer does have a representation agreement with another brokerage for the following properties. If they tell you they have looked at another home with another agent, and always, always, always ask, do you have a signed buyer broker agency agreement of any kind with another agent, even if it's expired? Because this is to help cover you and protect you in the brokerage in case that other agent were to come back and say, "Oh well, I showed them this property first, and they bought it with you. I'm now going to sue you for compensation." Brokerage fee. Again, keep in mind this is the total amount you can be paid. You can't get paid more than this. So if you're working with the transaction coordinator and you're paying the transaction coordination fee, as some of you are, then you put that in there. If you're on the Phoenix program in those first two levels and it's paid out of the company amount, then you could choose to lose that blank, or you could choose to put it in there so that your buyer is still paying it. Dollar amount and whatever percentage of the gross purchase price that you agree to. Remember, you can't get paid more than that. You can get paid less than it. If the seller only offers 2.5% and won't come up to 3, you'll get 2.5%, but it's covered. But if you put 2% in there and the seller's offering 3%, you're only getting 2%. And the seller's on that. Always make sure you fill in the protection period. The number of months you put in there is entirely up to you. My favorite is a former agent or an agent that I know who accidentally put 20 in there instead of 2. And I thought, you're really going to try to keep track of that buyer for the next 2 years if they were to buy with someone else. Shall or may on dispute resolution is up to you and your buyer. Shall obligates them that if there's any dispute that we cannot, over the contract, that cannot be worked out within the brokerage, is going to be required to go to mediation. May means it goes to it. Okay. Anyway, you're going to go through and fill all of these out. You'll notice that the buyer due diligence checklist, you're still going to have to make sure that Prime Real Estate Experts LLC gets put in here, your name in there. All of these blue lines need to be filled out. We're going to go through the documents more in depth on a different video, but you'll notice that all of them, initials and everything, are already set up so that it's ready. At the end, you can now save and close if you choose to send for everything's filled out. When you send it for e-sign, it's not going to do this, by the way, because it would have emails in there. But you'll notice you get this really chunky message that goes out with it. Feel free to update this. Testy and Stoppy. And put something in here that makes more sense to them. The and then it's not going to let me hit send because we don't have emails in there. But as soon as you hit send, the first thing it will do is have you sign on the one line where you have to sign on the buyer broker agency agreement, and then it goes out. From here, you'll know that It's gone out for their signatures, and then you just have to check the status as you wait. I'm going to go ahead and save and close for right now. But you'll see right here on the required, it'll say waiting for signatures. Once it's signed, then it'll say signed. And that's when you know you have signed copies of everything. Now, ultimately, what your transaction coordinator is going to do and what you're doing in the long term is you're going to split all these apart into individual documents because you'll notice, oh, look, here's our affiliated business agreement. Here's your agency relations disclosure, buyer due diligence, wire fraud. You could choose to fill them out one at a time and send a half a dozen emails. This allows you to do it all at once, and then we take them apart. Once it's signed, congratulations, you've got a signed agreement, and it's time to go forth and help them get a house.